Oh, hello. This video is for Richard, and I could not remember your last name. Something with S, something that sounded very interesting. It sounded maybe somehow had a Soviet sound in it. Sovyarenko or something like this. I don't know. Ha, that's too difficult. I would have to like practice saying that first for like an hour before I can remember that. So anyway, you are starting to become more authentic in my view of you. So I think that you may be the authentic Richard S. So, but can you can you give me a link to your Facebook page? I will click friend or follow, then I can check you out and see how you look like and see what you're up to. That's interesting. And you'll see my Facebook page, which is full of activism and some success stories, not all bummer. So more and more success stories, and I am happy about this. It's a great progress up. So it's fantastic. And so a couple of things I wanted to talk about. I think that you are very fresh and very intellectual and very poetic and very artistic and very sharp observing and very young, but in a good way. Young and fresh brain that's not cluttered with animal sludge, yet hopefully never becomes. So that's great. And you are not taking offense to my videos, which is fantastic, which did lead me to believing in your authenticity, because anybody who takes offense to my videos obviously does not care, is not one of the caring people. So every caring person is definitely not going to take offense. They're going to agree with me. And I see it when people take offense, even if they try to hide it, you know, like some other folks that I have talked to throughout the years. I see it right away when they are nipped in the butt by what I say. It doesn't matter how they disguise themselves as not being offended, but they will reveal it in some way or another. Just the energy itself of that what they write, I can detect it. I've become very good at that. So yeah, I know right away when I talk to people whether there's ego involved or not. And I'm not talking about the regular ego. I'm talking about the rather psychotic ego. So when I see a psychotic ego, I back off with people. I can't support it. I will never ever convince these people when they have a psychotic ego. I had a psychotic boyfriend once, a long time ago. And like talking to a psychotic person is so incredibly unpredictable. It's frightening. It's like Norman Bates all over again. So no, thank you. I have more important things to do with my life than that. But it makes me feel sad for anybody who has a convoluted ego, for anyone who has schizophrenia of some sort or another, or DID. It's absolutely horrific. I mean, it's terrible suffering. And I, as an ant of activism, as I call myself, I can only offer so much to people. If they are in total resistance to what I say, then there is no way I can reach them. So if they are blocked by armors, there's no way I can help them in any way with what I say. So it will always be perceived as a threat to them. Whatever I say, I can say anything. It'll be perceived as a threat to their ego. Beautiful outside, and I am absolutely deeply grateful for being here in this amazing area that resembles very much the area and the climate of Monaco, but it's at the other halfway around the globe, and it is very moderate, very maritime climate, and it is not developed. The drawback is I have no intellectual friends here. I have been in Connecticut when I was 15, and it is very nice, but it's very developed. Of course, the East Coast is very developed, and that is not too much fun, but the people who live there, particularly in Connecticut, they are all extremely well behaved and extremely sophisticated, extremely intelligent and extremely nice and interesting, and there are artists who live there. We've been also to Long Island, and we visited the artist Werner Pfeiffer from Germany, a friend of my parents, and that was awesome. That is an awesome place, Long Island. Really, really, really awesome. Even though it was kind of rainy and kind of foggy, but it was absolutely awesome. I don't know how it is today. It may have become more developed, as every place on earth is steadily becoming more developed. It's a pity. It's absolutely terrible, and that's why I talk about overpopulation, because it is a really grave danger for planet Earth, more than anything else, actually. But of course the egos don't want to hear about it. But that's why it's important that as many people talk about it as possible, because the subject needs to sink in as time goes by, sink in more and more. So it's very, very important. So what else did I want to say? I had artist friends in LA when we lived in LA. I had a great friend called Hillary Kay. You may know her because, I don't know, because her parents are also living in, I think in Connecticut. I think that's what she mentioned. Or Long Island, somewhere there. Very wealthy people who are modern art collectors. And she's a very great artist. She works with aquarelle. She does very minimalist structures, and they're very relaxing, very zen, and very calming. Really the opposite of her own mind. And I can relate so much to her because my mind is all over the place, and I too paint very minimalist things. So I can show you. It's a pretty large one. It's a styrofoam board. I paint on styrofoam boards because they're so much more workable. I don't need to use gesso underneath. This is my husband, Paul. And these figures here, this is the blue god in dog form, and these are the blue gods in people form. So, and this painting is called Love and peace for all living beings. And that's my message also for the world. Love and peace for all living beings equally much. There's no difference between all of us Earthians. I love talking to people a whole lot. I very much enjoy that. And I am kind of like collecting brains out there in the world, like jewelry. And like other people, they go out to the beach with a metal detector to find rings and stuff. And I am on the internet with my brain collector, brain detector brain, to detect precious brains. And when I see one, I am always like really happy. I found a precious brain. But these brains are very elusive. They come and go, and I have a good conversation, and then they fly off into the air again, and that's wonderful. I'm not the kind of person who wants to bind people towards me, and I've met some very interesting people over the course of the last couple of years. Some were very tormented. Not all of them were egoic. Some were tormented and not egoic. Most of them are tormented and very egoic. So I met another guy, Eric, from Kentucky, who is a philosophy graduate. He finally had graduated, and he's probably doing his dissertation right now on Michel Foucault and deconstructionism. And I talked to him for like half a year, and it was a real trip. It was a real gem that I found there. It was awesome to talk to him. Very great. I didn't agree with him on his lifestyle or different things, but that didn't matter. It didn't matter to him. It didn't matter to me that much. You know, we just voiced each other's opinions, and it was completely cool. And that's what I love. I love that when I can voice my opinion, the other doesn't agree necessarily, but is totally cool with it. So that's always awesome. I can see it right away when somebody is not cool with what I say. They think they are writing very tolerantly and all of this, but I see the nitpickings in it. And that's not tolerant, of course, when somebody is nitpicking other people's opinions apart and finding fault with it and bitching about it in some way or another, maybe very covertly. But yeah, most people, they do this, and then I fly off like a bird. So we fly together, we flock together, we fly apart. Either we fly apart in ressentiment, or we fly apart in total acceptance. You know? So either way, that's what's going on with all these different brains out there. And I think it's just psychologically ultra interesting for me to watch this and study this. It's so amazing. I mean, the kind of stuff you can study on the internet, on YouTube in particular. You can, I mean, as a psychologist, for me, hobby psychologist, because I didn't finish my studies, but as a psychologist, either hobby or professional, doesn't matter. I mean, you would just have a feast of information there. It's like a all-you-can-eat buffet 24 hours a day. And it's so interesting, these different groups of people. So, I think you grew up with very intellectual parents, and you may have one sibling or maybe no sibling, and you grew up with a lot of money, and you grew up with a lot of lavishness, but not wasteful lavishness, like those tacky people that make it financially, but the old aristocratic ways, the ones who let their hedges grow 20 feet high and 8 feet thick and have them immaculately trimmed from top to bottom all the way in one straight line, no embroidery type of things carved into it, but one straight hedge, and that spans for acres. And maybe a maze garden in it, and some really gigantic roses, like size of my head, purple, pink, and burgundy roses. So yeah, so that's what I imagine when I talk to you. That's the kind of image that comes up. And so everything's stylish, everything is beautiful, and no ugliness in it. And that's how I grew up, and I'm deeply grateful for that. The flip side of the coin is that wherever I go, almost feels like it does not in any way match up to that, what I have been spoiled with. And that is a pity, because I don't have a cook, and I am not patient in the kitchen at all, and my husband has to do everything, and it is usually not very good. Because he's not a chef, and he cooks way too greasy, and too much fish. I don't like that, and I'm a vegan now, so I don't like these animal grease smells, and the salad gets old very fast. Stuff like that doesn't keep. When you have a chef, he always goes every day out there shopping and buys fresh stuff, so you have a crisp fresh salad to eat every single day, without fruit flies in it, without mold, without fermentation taste. So that's good. That's what money can get you. So other than that, money is a means, just a means to an end. You know, money does not define a person as elegant, which so many people falsely believe. And so many guys out there who think they can impress a woman with money only. Money is now what defines my personality. It's all about money. It's like, if I have money, I am the grandest. And I find that extremely pitiful when people react like this. Like Richard Berman, I don't know if you heard about him, market psychologist, who really thinks that it doesn't matter how you make your money. I mean, you could be trampling on other people while you do it, and you can trample on the whole world. He thinks he can just trample everything down. As long as he makes money, then he is interesting to women, and yeah, then he can get his Russian mail order bride and stuff like that. So with those people, I have nothing to do. And matter of fact is, I have met people from all walks of life, and I talk to every single person, doesn't matter who that is. Could be a crippled person in a wheelchair, it could be a homeless person on the street, could be a very stinking, dirty homeless person on the street. I feel sorry for those. And my dog Kenny, who is the Buddha, he does not discriminate between anybody. He'll go right up to the smelliest person on the street, and I go, oh boy. I mean, I have OCD, you know. I go, oh boy, inside, but I don't do anything to prevent him from going up there. And then he will lean himself against that dirty person who carries all kinds of particles on him, methamphetamine, cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, hallucinogenics, you name it. And it's all embedded together with spilled beer and food and maybe feces, who knows. And it's all on his clothes, and Kenny will rub himself against him, and he will look him deep in the eyes with his blue eyes, and just makes my heart melt. I just feel like this is true love, you know, this is the message to the whole world. Richard Berman too, in particular, he should see this. Richard Berman should be able to encounter this one day, to see Kenny going up to a stinking homeless person and looking him deep in the eyes. That's true love. And so all these people that are carried away with money, 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 wearing this amazingly expensive suit, and so impressing, you know, it's like love is there too. Love exists too. So maybe we can also love, you know, not just the ones. So if we get all these facets together in one package, maybe that'll be superhuman quality, right? So, and that's what I'm aspiring to, and that's what I want other people to aspire to. I want all the homeless people to aspire to it as well, and get back on their feet and wash themselves. And it's like what Madonna said. She said, sex is dirty when people don't wash themselves. And that is so true, isn't it? I mean, yeah, it's like when somebody, and I remember back then when I was like 21 or something, my parents, because they're in a Rotary Club, they took us to the Primate Center in Göttingen, Germany. And there was somebody, I think it was Dr. Robert Sapolsky, when he was young. He was there with his long curls, and he was giving a lecture on primate behavior. And we weren't speaking English very well at that time, but we tried to follow what he was saying. And he's very well articulated, so it was very pleasant to listen to him. And so at least the person looked like Robert Sapolsky from my memory, so I don't know 100% for sure whether it was him, but it could have very well been him. So I was very impressed with him and with this whole presentation. And he said that when the primates that they are observing, they have a very large territory. It's not like in a zoo. They have space to roam, and I thought that is cool. At least they have that. It's also has a good climate in there. It's like an enclosed dome type of thing. And so they were observing this group of, I think they had different types. They had baboons and they also had chimpanzees. And so they were observing them and trying to see if they resemble each other in behavior and so on. So what they observed is that the ones that were outcasts from their own group, that had to live as a margin dweller in their societies, that were not allowed near the other ones, if that happened through a prolonged time where they were not allowed back into the group, they stopped grooming themselves. Not just that they were not groomed by the others, but they also stopped grooming themselves, and they started to get infections. And they said this is absolutely a very important observation, because that seems to be happening in all species, actually, not just primates. And it happens also with wolves and other animals, and certainly with humans. And so when we see somebody on the street completely down and out, and they don't know at all what they're doing anymore, completely like a basket case, 5150, you know, and falling through the grid of society, not having anybody to watch after them. In Germany, where I'm from, people, when there's somebody on the street like this, it does not take 2 days for somebody to come and help and bring them to a halfway house where they are really taken care of, where they're not turned down, and they're not just patched up and then turned down. They're going to take really good care of these people. I had a friend, Birgit, she saw somebody sitting there by an old church, and she saw it from her window, and she went down there and she gave him food and different things. She bought him a coffee and started talking to him, and just a very mentally ill person who wasn't grooming himself anymore. And she called for help, and they came and they washed him and they took care of him. They put him in a halfway house because he was not able to take care of himself. We need to go a step further, of course, and we need to empower these people. But so far, at least, you know, all these Republicans out there calling Europe the commie land and stuff like this. This is the plus of a socialist market structure. It's not communism, it's socialized, and because of that socialization, people who fall through the grid, or through the grid of society at least, they will be caught by the grid of a social structure, and they will be helped. At least so far helped that they don't have to be dying from infections, and they'll be fed, and they even get dental care. See, this is so aggravating for me even to think about it, so how these people here in this country can possibly argue here. So I'm touching on a lot of subjects and just getting into this and this and this, and I'm all over the place. So yeah, anyway, when they are not socialized, when they're not part of the group, they become so depressed that they can't take care of themselves at all anymore. And so I feel terribly sorry for people like this who I see, and I'm not doing slave morality according to Friedrich Nietzsche. I'm very much against it, and I'm very vigilant of it. But that doesn't mean we have to forget about our our compassion and our empathy. So I have very deep empathy for all beings, it doesn't matter who that is. And I even gave a homeless woman a hug once. I had to take a shower afterwards, of course, and change all of my clothes. But I had to do it because she was sitting on the street crying, and like she looked like she was going to commit suicide. She looked like she was in total despair. I felt so deeply sorry for her because I've been in total despair so many times in my life. So how can I let somebody just sit there and cry? You know, all these other people, they'll just walk by. They don't give a hoot. I don't want to say the F word anymore. So yeah, so this is how it works. And my dog is my ultimate teacher. You know, he teaches me true love. He makes me even dissolve my OCD issues. So it's very cool. Yeah. So, but then, you know, there's some bad homeless people too that are very selfish and all of this. Some of them that will never care about someone else. But there are some gem brains among them. If you know what to look for, you'll see it. And when they are on the street and totally down and out, they also lost their brains. But it is amazing to see from which lifestyles they have originated originally. So there are situations where, when you trace back the history of a specific homeless person, they may have been at once rich and they had a psychiatry office, and I've met those people, and they were seeing patients and they were helping other people, and then through whatever lousy circumstance they started drinking. But you know, a lousy circumstance alone is not the driving force. It's not the only driving force. It's merely a trigger. When somebody starts drinking, it is always an indicator that that person, it could be a psychiatrist himself, that person had never been stable within himself, that he was basically standing on sand blocks, basically, that were just holding up that far. And so then anything crumbles it down, and they become highly addicted to whatever it could be. They could be addicted to anything. Any kind of addiction can tear somebody down, can tear a life down completely. Particularly alcohol and drugs, and also gambling, of course. And our woman, who is a compulsive gambler, I went with her to Vegas one time. She's a high roller, and a high roller who rolls herself so low that she will maybe save money for breakfast, and then we have to go back to LA in her broken down car, So, but she is, of course, she is invited to the party, so to speak, because she will spend. So, and all of this this is very unsocial, this whole situation. I went there with her. We booked a room at the Flamingo. Back then they didn't have the other amazing hotels yet. And what did I do? We ate dinner. Then I bought myself a really large ice cream, and I put 50 cents into the slot machine. Nothing came back. I said, oh well, then they're not, okay, too bad, but I'm not going to put another 25 cents in. So I bought myself a large ice cream instead. She didn't have that ice cream. I felt sorry for her, but instead she gambled away, what was it, like $30,000? That was her entire savings that she had. She worked hard for that. She had a jewelry store and worked real hard for that money. And she gambled that away in one night. And while I went back to the room, slept, she gambled all night long, and I didn't hear her coming. She was very, very quiet. Then when the sun came up and we woke up, she said, Nicola, I gambled away my whole money. Okay, I said, all right. I felt very, very bad for her. She said, but I saved money for breakfast. Okay. So we went, ate breakfast, and then we drove back in the extreme heat, with the sun beating down on us, on that broken down car, driving back, tuckering back on those roads, past the cacti, and past the sand and the alkali, back to LA, and back to Primal Therapy, where we both were. And she didn't have money left for sessions, and so she had to go back to working in the jewelry store to make the money back as much as she could, so she could afford sessions. I mean, that was my first encounter with these extreme addictions that people can have. And it was very interesting and very depressing for me to see. And I was just so deeply, deeply grateful that these slot machines and all of this does not affect me in any way. Very deeply grateful for that. But I miss Sarah, amazing woman, great woman, very sweet, very kind-hearted, and I feel terrible for what she did out of her life, and I don't know what's going on with her now. Last time I saw her, her teeth were falling out, and she looked very, very sick. And it's absolutely horrific, and I see a lot of... I had another friend, an alcoholic. She once used to be a photo model in LA, a woman from Sweden, and she used to look stunning and amazing, and like Ingrid Bergman, and unbelievable. And she even worked with Steven Spielberg on his very first film projects, and she even knew Jiddu Krishnamurti in person. Can you believe that? I mean, incredibly interesting woman, and interesting stories that she told me. But she became an alcoholic. So when I talked to her, I had to talk through that wall of alcoholism that came from her. So it wasn't really. It was making the conversations very strained and not that not that pleasant because of her alcoholism. And but it was still interesting to talk to her and hear her stories. But she drank herself into complete sickness. I don't know. I have not heard from her in a long time. So drank herself into total sickness. And then I had another friend from the Ukraine who is living not far from Asia, and I love her. I hope she's doing well. Another photo model woman, and drinking. So I had to back off because I don't like the alcoholism at all. I don't like that, and I find that very destructive. It is a complete wedge into any kind of true communication. And I tried to help her, but I didn't succeed with it. She has to want to help herself. And then I have to back off. I have to do it for my own sanity, basically, you know. So, yeah, those are all examples of people who once had it basically all. They had it all. They had extreme amounts of money, beauty, intellectual strength, intellectual wealth. Because you can still see it later on even. It's still shining through. But they have to be doing themselves in with these kind of things. And that's why I make these videos, because I find that incredibly sad. You know, that there are so many gems in the world who are letting themselves go into an addiction of some sort or another, you know. And then I even met a Sadomaso lady, so very interesting to talk to also. But kind of interesting stuff that she revealed to me. I mean, she's not doing it anymore, but she said it felt totally empty. It was like always this thrill, you know, in the beginning, then total emptiness later on, like plunging into a complete empty abyss. And that's just so clear. It's just so loud and clear, the message of that, you know. So message also to all sadistic people in the world, that hurting somebody else is not in any way fulfilling, you know. It's not in any way making the sadistic person's life better. Quite the opposite. It will tear people's lives completely down into a ruin. And it's like what I said in my other videos. It's like our body cells are not, they're not here to hurt another organism's body cells. So they don't want to hurt. It's the twisted brain, the ego convolution that does that, that goes to war and that does executions and so on, and butchering. So yeah, and all these people, you know, that once had it all, and when we traveled in our motorhome, we took a couple of vacations in our motorhome. We saw a lot of people who were living in their motorhomes, and many of them had dogs, so we got to talk to them because of their dogs. And I was very, very surprised at, I mean, not everybody, but there was a number of people that I met who were very highly intellectual, who had really precious brains and were very, very sensitive. I saw many people who had a very, very great brain, and also they ended up in the motorhome because they were not able to do planning for their lives, and usually it was caused by alcoholism. And they were still interesting to talk to because all of that, the glorious brain was still shining through, and I felt terribly sorry for them for having to dwindle down in their lives like this. So, and I also learned a lot from that. I learned that it is utmost critical to get one's brain in order to be absolutely, totally sober, and to keep on learning every single day. My mother is very resistant to learning. Now she's 80 years old and becoming very resistant to it. And when people become resistant to learning, then the curve goes down usually. And I'm very worried about this, you know. So that's why I kept telling my mother what she can do as holistic means to keep her brain fresh and circulated. So it's very, very important to be going on the internet and not to do video gaming or watching some stupid videos, but to be engaging into conversations, or to watch documentary films, or to, better yet, to read about research product, read anything we can find on research on biology and neurology and any kind of interesting subject field. So in order to keep ourselves learning and growing and expanding, and the wider our horizon is, of course, and I'm not just making this video for one person. Whenever I talk, it might sound patronizing, but when I get into the subject, I'm making this for all people, you know. So someone accused me of being patronizing, so that's why I say this. I don't mean to be in any way like I know it all. I'm just giving my knowledge about how we can improve our lives to all people out there, you know. So I don't know everybody, so that's why I'm just giving out information broadly to the whole population. And so also I know so many different people, and that's why I learned so much about how all these different brains function, and all these risks that are involved, and that we have to pay attention to with eagle eyes. Anyway, thank you so much for the conversation. I very much enjoyed that, and you're awesome. Take care.